right, welcome back, everybody. We are going to resume the last section of Pragma today before we go into our happy hour. So please grab a seat, and we'll get started in a few seconds. So we got about 4 more talks to go before we conclude today. And the next talk is going to be a super interesting one because it takes advantage of all the things that we know are about to be a big problem, and it gives you good intuition for how do you solve for it. We are going to learn about how do we actually make data on Web3 more composable and use that in multiple places without actually compromising on the integrity of that information or the origins of how that information was gathered. To talk about that, I want to bring on Swaroop, who is the co-founder and CEO of Powerloom, an amazing project that takes advantage of on-chain data. And Swaroop is going to share you how to build composable Web3 networks. So please welcome Swaroop on stage.
Thank you, Karthik. Can you guys hear me? Oh, thank you so much, Karthik. Excited to be here. My name is Swaroop. I'm one of the co-founders of Powerloom. I live in Vancouver, Canada. Super excited to finally come down to Australia. Sorry for bringing the rain. Apparently, I'm bringing it to everywhere I go, including Dubai, for those who know what happened a week ago. As long as it doesn't flood here, all good. And it's even more exciting to be able to do this. So I'm going to try and attempt to do live demos, which I think I have a nice experience of having to do that every time I come here. It's probably been a little less than a year since I first introduced what Powerloom does. It's probably Global Waterloo. So the whole concept of composable data networks, right? So one of the main reasons, to give a little bit of history of how we got started here, a little over 3 years ago, I used to run infrastructure for a small network called Matic, which eventually became Polygon. So for a lot of the RPCs and explorers was all run by my 2-person team, including me, having a lot of sleepless nights. And as we sort of scaled that from a little, probably the first customer was Polymarket, doing like 1 million calls a day to doing 1 billion calls a day, which is like 1,000x. And the whole segmentation that we used to run into, and it would essentially be centralized around us. So if we would go down, that would bring the network down. And my biggest worry always used to be is, what if something gets compromised, whether it's DeFi or, obviously at that time, a lot of exchanges didn't exist, but we were starting to move away from centralized exchanges. And as we saw the explosion of Uniswap and Aave and many other DeFi projects, it was super crucial because as you're building on new high throughput chains, and now it's sort of become the de facto standard, and super exciting to see like Kane and his team sort of making that the de facto thing. So I'll be looking forward to in 12 days on what it'll look like. And so yeah, so we've been on this mission to democratize data accessibility and composability. Now, what I mean here is like it's about complex data stuff, right? So it's not just the raw RPC, which we were doing before, but when you sort of add more and more layers. So for example, and if I were to, I'm going to try and like maybe not do a live demo here, but we talked about how I think he gave an example of, was it Bonk to Pepe? Since I'm a more ETH guy, I'm going to stick around with ETH-based tokens. But let's say I have Degen token on base, and I want to swap this. Right now, it, of course, queries the RPC and gives you sort of a price quote, liquidity, and the AMM sort of takes care of that execution of that trade. But if you were to sort of now analyze that data, you go deeper into things like Uniswap provides you this sort of complex dashboard, where you can see all the top tokens, the top pairs, what's happening in between each of this. Now, this data isn't coming, the source of it is on-chain, but when it's being presented to the end users, it's actually not coming through a decentralized source. Now, of course, it's run through different protocols. There's Graph and many other indexers. But in the end, we sort of make compromises, right? So what ends up happening is if another decentralized, like a dApp wants to access it, they have to sort of rely on some sort of centralized hosted service, which beats the purpose of why we're doing this in the first place. So that's kind of how me and my co-founders sort of started working on Powerloom. We started building this protocol where our purpose was very simple. How do we take the same thing, but turn it into something where you do not, one, you don't need to query a centralized node. And even if you are querying a network, the result of that is something that should be easily accessible. So I'm going to try without, hopefully the internet doesn't give up on me. But this exact same page is a clone of that same Uniswap dashboard. The difference being that it doesn't really query the network. So all of the data you see, despite the slowness of the internet that I'm on right now, it's able to load that because it doesn't have to query another source, fetch that data. So all of this is actually sitting on an IPFS hash. Now, how we sort of get there is this composable data network that we've been building. And I was thinking about the last time I sort of did this, and this was in Waterloo. At that time, we had 6 snapshot nodes. This was like the first time we had opened up our testnet. And since then, I think if I look at the latest count, let me see. This is us on base. Let me see, where is our... There we go. So we are currently, the network's still on testnet, but the data that we actually track is the one that I visualize right now. So all of these are being run through these sort of nodes. And currently we have around 4,700 active nodes. I believe totally there are about 5,300. So any of you in the audience can actually go and mint that node as well. I won't go deep into it purely because I'm concerned about the legal ramifications of Australia. I don't know how the laws work here. At least I'm very restricted from saying certain things in Canada and US, so I'm just going to leave it at that. But you can mint your node, and you can actually take part in this network. However, I'm going to try and sort of skip through that and show you how it works. And so this resulting interface that you see is exactly the same data set that's coming in, but there's about 4,000 nodes who have distributed this workload, and they're reaching that same data point. Now, how we do it is, of course, the protocol is sort of designed that you can build any sort of a use case on top of it. So similarly, we have what we have done, the exact same use case, we have configured it for the base network here. So it obviously has different pairs and different pools. And in the same way, the snapshotters sort of capture that data, and then when it gets aggregated by a different set of nodes, we see the end result, and all they have to go through is like some sort of a basic consensus that we built. So I'm going to try and see if I can show this on our Explorer. Let me try to show it live, and if it's not working, then okay, cool. At least it's syncing. So we've had about 100 million of these sort of transactions is what we call it, but inherently they're just for every epoch, when we have all these data markets, all these nodes sort of combine together and reach consensus for each of those points. So as you can see, they're sort of dialing in. We are using this sort of a new layer 3 using conduit. This way, we are able to run this on a more EVM-based consensus, but that's something that we're working towards improving that for a mainnet, which should hopefully come out in a month or two. And so when you sort of look at every individual transaction, you can actually go deeper into it and understand what is that atomic data market. For example, in this case, it's like a pair contract where we are looking at total reserves for a certain pair on that specific use case of Uniswap. And for each, for that particular epoch ID, which is related to maybe an Ethereum block or maybe a bunch of Ethereum blocks, depending on who's sort of consuming that data, you're able to actually post a signature, and then once it reaches consensus, the finalization occurs. And we have a little dashboard that I was trying to load up today, but let's see if this loads up. Okay, okay, there we go. So if we open this, should hopefully be a live Ethereum block from maybe a few minutes ago or maybe even more recent. Clearly, this is why I try to not do live demos, but I have some cached results to show. I just didn't want to, in the spirit of decentralization, I didn't want to like show some screenshots that I've already prepared. So we're going to try. Perfect. It's loaded up. So yeah, so this particular block is from like a minute ago. Obviously, that's the time it took to probably load this up. So for that particular epoch, there's all these different use cases that are on our network right now. So whether it's this Ethereum-based one, which this one is the base pairs. and these are the Ethereum pairs. So these are all very different set of data markets, right? So, but they all sort of reach that same finalization. And what you see as the end result is something that dApps can use, and even Uniswap or other foundations who want to rely on it, instead of looking at centralized solutions, as you can see in the network calls, they could actually be using Powerloom. And the good thing is that the network itself is capable of giving this data as on simple storage protocols like IPFS. So if you use a browser like Brave, you can actually fetch it even on your own computers. You don't need some complicated RPC setup to fetch all this information. Cool. So I'm still doing good on time. So I'm going to try and see if I can do a live demo of how this network works. So what I've done is I have already minted the node. And I will walk you through one of our dashboards. And let me make sure. Perfect. OK. So as you can see, this node is not running since like a day ago. This is like our internal network dashboard where people who want to contribute to this network. The good thing is they're just doing very small bits of work, depending on the use case they want to contribute to. And it's pretty simple. You essentially just have a Docker-based setup that you configure, maybe even a free RPC. You set up your wallet, and we have this concept of a burner wallet. The idea behind that is that it doesn't matter where you minted this NFT for your node. We call them internally snapshotters because they're constantly snapshotting data. And to run the snapshotter node, you can just assign any sort of a burner wallet. Doesn't need to have any gas. We've sort of taken care of all that abstraction. And all you need to do is run it once. And let's give it a try. So at this point, it pulls from our open source repository, runs the command, and it connects to that same network that I was showing you here on the Explorer, fetches all the data markets that it needs to talk to. And let me see. OK, it's at least spinning up. Cool. So it's sort of making sure that all our configuration is in place. Is RPC URL provided? In this case, it's talking to Ethereum-based data networks, so it's only going to be helping with those data markets, but you can switch to any of the use cases. So all these use cases are currently seeded by us, and thanks to some of the hackathons we've been sponsoring. So we did one at Scaling Ethereum. We're going to be sponsoring the one over the weekend here as well. And there's, let's see, I got a small exception from the RPC. Wonderful. But it should still go through in terms of health, but let me double check if it does load. And it's as simple as that. So this could be run on a very, very basic computer. Like we have done it, like I think we have some folks running it on Raspberry Pi. They're also, I believe when I did this demo like 11 months ago, the goal was like, it should be as simple as possible. There's also one-click setups. So we've worked with some partners. So we have done with like previously, we had some companies who wanted to run these Powerloom nodes on their decentralized networks. So as you can see, my node is now actually running. So that's awesome. And so over the course of 24 hours, it contributes to the network, and it gets awarded sort of a XP points for now, because we are still in testnet. There's no real token. But once the mainnet goes live, that's how. So all you have to do is run this protocol, and you can contribute to it. You don't need very sophisticated hardware. That's been our goal. And as we sort of add more and more use cases, this is kind of where we wanted to build a much bigger network with more and more users. And I think we have done a pretty good job of getting like about 4,000 unique people from like all over the world. I think we have a bunch of folks here in Australia as well. I think I noticed on my Twitter yesterday, they're running nodes. They reached out. They probably weren't able to make it to the event because it's sold out, clearly. But hoping to meet them as well. And excited to have some of you joining in. I am still doing good on time. This is awesome. So I actually wanted to showcase something we haven't announced yet. It's a very similar use case, but we wanted to work on a different kind of a DeFi protocol to showcase that, hey, it's not just about Uniswap or NFTs and all these things. So we've been working, one of the things that I use the most personally, and of course, one of our backers is also the creator of this protocol, Stani. And I've been thinking, like, how do we take that same use case? Could we sort of port it over? So it's open source, and we worked with one of our developers who actually had wanted to contribute to the protocol and take this exact same Aave data, and also snapshot that using Powerloom's protocol. So super excited to show you something that is not public yet. But I did have to make it public for the case of this demo. And it's the exact same thing running through Powerloom's protocol. I'm going to try and see the demo, so it's a little faster than the Uniswap one. So it shows all of those data points. No need to query any sort of a decentralized server to fetch all of this data. So something that we're able to solve thanks to our approach is that the data is readily available because it's sort of a pre-compute model. Now, it definitely has its challenges compared to a query-based model, but our goal was that we wanted more people to be able to contribute to the network, not only the ones who are sort of curating the data set, but also the ones who are sort of running these nodes and ensuring that it's secure. So I think that's kind of where we want to do, so super cool. Actually, when I was trying the demo yesterday after landing, it wasn't working, so that's awesome to have it working while this is going on. So yeah, so it's similar to, it's basically the Aave dashboard, but it's completely ported over. I would recommend most people to check out our Powerloom repositories. So we have everything is open source. Not only is the aspect of running the nodes, but all these use cases that we see, so we call them snapshot or computes. So all of these computes have like for every use case that we have built, and also all individual hackers who have been hacking through our hackathons, and now those who are contributing to the protocol are also able to sort of contribute to this repository. And eventually, once the network goes live on mainnet, we want it to be built in a way that anyone can sort of propose a certain data need. So if they have a specific purpose that maybe it's for their dApp or whether it's something that they're already running, they may be able to propose it on chain, and it'll be like 100% automated, because then a developer could also be contributing using just a simple GitHub issue. So yeah, I think that's all the demo I wanted to showcase. Please check out our documentation on how all of this works. I didn't want to go super technical on what it is, so our docs are live. Also, along with the code, the documentation also, it's something we've been working hard to make it better. So if you see some gaps, please feel free to open a PR or ask for some feedback. And if you want to run your own node without having to mint the NFT and spend any money, we have built a full-fledged developer dashboard. If you go to powerloom.dev, it takes you to this sort of a DevNet that we've built specifically for hackers who are building new use cases. And if you are interested and you want to actually take part in the real network, then you can go to powerloom.network. Hopefully it does open here in Australia. Usually it doesn't whenever I do demos. And yeah, please do follow us on Twitter for more updates. I'm Swaroop H. Powerloom is Powerloom HQ, and we are also active on Farcaster. Thank you so much for listening, and awesome to have you all here. Bye.